All right, joined the show by Matt Parrino from Syracuse.com and the Shout podcast. What's up, brother?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. You're looking good, and I understand you're healing well.
I'm healing well. We are walking around, which is nice after 3 weeks in crutches. I think the funniest line that I received was walking through the Bills field house one of the first days, and Tre'Davious White saying, "Matt, you got the Trey White going on right now." He's obviously had, the torn ACL, the torn Achilles, so he's very used to walking around in a boot, and it was pretty funny.
That's great. Well, half the Bills are almost always on the IR in some way, shape, or form anyway, so why not join them, right? Like I said, thanks for doing this. So let's talk a little bit about the Bucks game. You know, Josh, 6 touchdowns, obviously, and everyone's talking about that, and he's getting all his flowers, but he was far from perfect, right? Some bad giveaways, some bad throws, and situations where they looked pretty easy. He got a lot of help on those touchdowns too, didn't he?
He did. Obviously, the last couple of weeks, I think one of the things that's really hurt the Bills' passing game, if you go back over the last couple of years where they've been so successful, is in the scramble drill. And I think Keon Coleman, who was obviously down this week, that's been one area of his game that I thought projecting from Florida State to here was going to be like this perfect symphony with Josh Allen. And it just hasn't really meshed very well. And I think if you go back and watch this game, whether it was Gabe Davis, I think late in the game on a scramble drill, the Tyrell Shavers touchdown was Josh Allen buying some time in the pocket and Shavers realizing he had to adjust. He kind of broke off his route, got to the third level, and that to me is what makes this team so hard to deal with offensively and why you could see a 40-plus point performance, because even when you scheme it up pretty well against Josh, when he gets off structure, that's historically where he's been his best. And so you got to put the receivers out on the field that are going to maximize those opportunities. And I think, Curtis Samuel's banged up early in the week. That's one area that I've kind of wanted more from him as well. I know he made that big play in the Dolphins game where it was like 3rd and 16 and he ends up getting a 21-yard reception. But this last game, there was one play where he was running out of real estate on a crossing route near the sideline, and Allen kind of gave him the finger like, dude, go deep down the field. There's open grass. That's a wide open touchdown. And he was a little bit too late to react to that, and it ended up being a long incompletion. Those are the kinds of things that you got to get on the same page with in practice. But I think with Shavers and Palmer and Keir has historically been really good, and then Gabe back in the mix, they got a bunch of guys that are built to kind of re-energize this passing game.
Is it I don't know. Is it scary to hear Josh say, "Hey, I could have hit my first progression and I could have hit my second progression. They were open, but I didn't." And obviously still made a big play. Is that worrisome at all to you, knowing that, yeah, there are guys open? He even openly admits it in a press conference, and he doesn't throw to him.
No, only because who we're talking about. I think that he has built kind of equity and confidence level that even when he goes through these stretches of poor decision making or late on decision making, he's always found a way to get out of it, get out of the funk. And it's pretty impressive on a day when you could probably take 6 to 10 throws and really break it down in the film room of what he should have done and how bad the throw was. The interception was obviously the worst of them all, that first one. And he still goes out there and throws for over 300 yards and becomes only the second player ever to score 6 touchdowns, 3 rushing, 3 passing in the same game. And oh, by the way, the other time it was Josh Allen too.
Right.
It's like, I don't know. It's hard to be critical of the guy because he has such another gear that almost nobody else in the league can hit right now. And if you're talking about like the power players as we project into December and in January, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the quarterbacks that have done it at a high level, obviously Matthew Stafford as well in the NFC. Things aren't looking good in Baltimore and Kansas City right now. The Bills have 2 more wins than both of those teams, and their playoff push is going to be very interesting over the course of the next couple of weeks. They have some tough games. I think the Bills have a much easier schedule than either of those teams, and I think the Bills are still going to make a run at the division. So I it's hard to criticize Josh Allen too much on the heels of a performance where you're right, he did make a lot of mistakes, but man, does he get right a lot of the time.
And you're right. I mean, look, because of who he is and how he performs, I think there is this, and me included, probably this expectation for him to be perfect all the time because of who he is and what, the personality he portrays and all of that and the competitor he is. I get that. And so I respect what you're saying about how, look, he had some bad plays, but everybody does, right? Regardless of how good or bad they are. So I totally respect that thought process. I want to skip ahead, then I want to go back to the Bills. So could you imagine, and you're way more in the loop than I am on stuff like this, but could you imagine if Jamar Chase were to now the Bengals have the Patriots and the Ravens coming up before the Bills, but do you imagine if he appealed the suspension and didn't get suspended until the Bengals played the Bills? Can you imagine if that fell that way for us?
Yeah, that would be pretty wild because, of course, him being out against the Patriots probably gives them a guaranteed win, right? Like Joe Flacco, T. Higgins is a good player, but there is just a lot of issues in Cincinnati right now. But I don't even know if Jamar Chase necessarily changes the math in that
Yeah.
game. I think that that is a team that they're probably a win or two or a loss or two away from probably shutting down Joe Burrow. Because if you don't have a chance to make the playoffs, like what is even the point of trying to rush him back? And if he's not 100%, I mean, I'm not putting out your franchise quarterback unless he's 100%. So yeah, that I mean, in a perfect world, Bills fans are probably hoping like appeal, appeal.
Yeah, 100%. Back to the Bills games against the Bucks. So guys got open. That's been the cry all year. Well, guys can't get open. We don't have a burner. Well, the Bills didn't really have a burner in that game, right? I mean, they threw balls to the running backs. They threw balls to Gabe Davis, who might be their slowest receiver in terms of the wide receiver core, right? I mean, Palmer was in the game. He's quick. Samuel's quick, but those guys have been in games before. So, why in that game were guys open? How much was it the Jamel Dean factor? Why did the pass game work so well?
I think you got to look at Joe Brady. I mean, if we're going to be critical of him on the heels of the Miami Dolphins game, I think he deserves a ton of credit. For us, I think an overall really good game plan. I was a little bit critical of them coming out and being so pass centric on that first down or that first drive. But at the same time, he made a good point in the aftermath. It's like you're backed up. You don't want to take any, great chances there. You want to try to move the ball. You want to try to have a fast start on the heels of what happened last week. And so you get a little bit aggressive and then they go back and try to run it a little bit, and that's not working as well. So it almost felt like they were kind of forced into a much more aggressive style. Now, the Bills ran more 11 personnel than they did in that game than they have in any game all season long. And if you go back to, the origins of Josh Allen's evolution, you'll find that that was the premier money package that the Bills offense under Brian Dable and then Ken Dorsey really found a way. It's three wide receivers, one running back, and one tight end. And with Dalton Kincaid out, the Bills have kind of gotten away from the 12 and the 13 that they were running a ton with the heavy tight end packages, and they've leaned a little bit more into their skill players. And I think that's really important because when Kincaid gets back, I think what's going to be on Joe Brady's plate is how do we interweave these two fundamentally different personnel identities together to create kind of like a symphony over the course of an entire game. He's never really been able to do that. Now, Dorsey wasn't really able to do it either. Since they've drafted Kincaid, the only real package that's really taken off for them is that 13 that's really gone on this year. I mean, it was a disappointing year last year for Dalton Kincaid. So we'll see how it materializes over the next couple of weeks as Kincaid gets ramped back up. He's probably going to miss Thursday as well. But I think Brady, I take one play out of that game that to me was a gotta have it. I think it was a third down call. I can't remember. It was the James Cook touchdown route. And the motion on that play, the quick play action, the quick getting the ball out of your hands for Josh Allen, and where James Cook was open in the flat. I mean, those are the kinds of plays I've been screaming for the Bills to kind of inject into this offense. You have one of the best weapons in the NFL. You just gave James Cook this huge extension. but it feels like at times like he's invisible in the passing game. And when he's been at his best over the last couple of years, I think those plays, types of plays, are a big part of why he's so hard to defend. So I think Joe Brady deserves a lot of credit for what they were able to do.
Yeah, preaching to the choir, my friend. I've been talking about that for a lot. Cook not in the game in critical situations, Cook not involved in the pass game. But it is really interesting. I mean, if you break it down, like who would have thought if James Cook was held in the ground game to what he was, A, B, Shakir gets shut out and there's no Dalton Kincaid, that the Bills were going to score 44 points. Like who would have ever predicted that with those three things in play is pretty remarkable. They have had the Bills issues with, I'll call them subpar teams on the road, right? I mean, we had issues with Atlanta, we had issues with Miami, and here we go to Houston, who's 5-5 with Davis Mills playing quarterback. Not much of a run game. You got one really serious weapon offensively in Nico Collins. Yes, their defense is outstanding, but if Petrie doesn't play with a concussion, that's advantage Bills. Do you think the Bills can come off this big, monstrous offensive performance despite a arguably subpar defensive performance again and play well and play to what we just saw a week ago?
Yes, and I think it'll mean a lot because they historically under Sean McDermott don't play well in Houston for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because they have such a good defense. So if the offense isn't having a good day, the defense has, I know that they don't have an imposing running game, but it's felt like anybody that lines up against the Bills can run the ball. So that's going to be a big part of this thing, and see if they can keep the momentum built in Tampa Bay going. Joe Brady talked about that. And on a short week, it feels like, all right, who's the healthiest? Who can get back and be a real impact player? Will Anderson's on the injury report for Houston. Joey Bosa's on the injury report for Buffalo. They're both going to be playing on a short week. Those are, two really key players in this game in terms of, singularly having an impact. And, Joey Bosa's going up against a much lesser quarterback in Davis Mills, but, Josh Allen hasn't had his best games in Houston either. And part of that is because of this defense and all the weaponry that they have at all three levels. The one thing I will say is like Derek Stingley Jr. is one of the top corners in the league. The Bills don't feature an offense where he's going to be traveling with any one specific player. And if they can lead into what they kind of built last week, get their run game going in this one, because they haven't been able to run the ball much over the last 2 weeks. That to me is going to be a good recipe on the road for getting out early, is if you can establish the run game, get James Cook back going downhill, finding those opening zones and getting those 10 to 15 yard gains and not setting yourself up in third and longs on the road. That gives them a chance to have a lot of success.
And the Texans are playing for something too, right? I mean, it's a home game. They've had successes against the Bills. They know what the Bills are. Again, it's another one of these teams Super Bowls, not exactly, but they're still at 5-5 alive for a playoff spot. They got work to do. They're not going to just roll over and look for a draft pick. So this could be a tough game for the Bills. Let me ask you about the young guys in the secondary. I mean, I didn't hear Maxwell Hairston's name called once, which is a good sign, right? Defensively against the Bucks, and Cole Bishop with another pick. I mean, especially with Cole Bishop, what button did they push with him in the last month, or switch did they flip for him to excel like he has in this last month and to look like the kid we thought we were going to get in the draft?
I'm as guilty as anybody with, maybe a little bit of impatience with Cole Bishop. And you look up at the start of the season and he missed a ton of training camp and 2 preseason games again. And, the noise gets louder about whether or not this is going to be the guy to be a hit at that safety spot. And whoever it was going to be, whoever they ended up drafting, especially high first, second round, following Poyer and Hyde, was going to be a really tall task. And I think what happens is we forget about the details and the context around some of these players sometimes, because there's Super Bowl windows here and Josh Allen is in his prime and you want to try to hit on all these draft picks. The kid is only 22 years old. He was 21 last year. He's one of the youngest starting safeties in the NFL, and he missed most of last season. He was on he didn't get his first start, I don't think, until November last year. I think he had 5 in the regular season. So he is just getting to the point this year on November 18th. I think he's about to start his 17th game, if not that, almost there. So he hasn't even played a full season in the NFL yet. And I think sometimes we're just a little bit too quick to judge. And I think that's why Sean and his staff, for the most part, and there's been some examples of like Kyer Elam where it hasn't worked out, and Cody Ford before him. But for the most part, they have a pretty good track record of developing these guys. And even if it's not year one or year two, finding a way to get them to get to where they need to be. And luckily for the Bills defense, it seems like Bishop is really taking off halfway through his second season.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that point that, yeah, the guy hasn't even played a whole year. Like, give him some game experience to develop, and it seems like it's working out really terrifically for this team. Hey, man, give your podcast a plug, give your writing on your website a plug, get that all out there for everybody to check out.
Yeah, you can find everything over at Syracuse.com. We are myself, Ryan Talbot, we do the Shout Buffalo Football podcast. You find that on YouTube and then all the audio platforms as well. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thank you for doing this on short notice. Really appreciate it. And are you going to Houston? You going out and you're going to make the trip or no?
Yep.
Awesome.
Leave tomorrow morning.
Enjoy some barbecue.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.